Hello, welcome. It is session 3, day 3. I hope that you have, if you're watching these in order, you have loved Heidi Hayes-Jacobs, who was just before this session. And it is my great pleasure to welcome Erika to the summit. She's a new colleague who was introduced to me through Ben Kellick, and she's doing some great work around learning, online teaching, and a new book is coming out soon, which is called Developing Habits of Genius, which is right up my alley. I've already put my order in and very excited. I've heard and know from my conversations with Erika that she's passionate about simplifying complex concepts, which is what we all love, and then providing practical and useful ways that we can use it in the classroom. So welcome, Erika.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
It's lovely to have you here beaming in from the United States. So thank you. So I'm going to ask the question I've been asking everybody to start off with, and that is, if you had a superpower, any superpower at all, personally or professionally, what would it be and why?
Oh my goodness. So I'm glad you didn't ask if you were a superhero, because superheroes always have a weakness. But if I had a superpower, I think it would be like mentally connect to masters, because then they can transmit to you everything they know without any effort at all. So that would be so awesome. That would be great.
To be able to download all their memories and their ideas, and so that you can
there we go.
Wisdom.
There we go. That would be great. That would be great.
It's like wisdom without the work.
Was that?
Wisdom without the work.
Yeah, exactly. Although you still have to practice what you learn, right?
Yes.
Which we'll see throughout the session today, but it will be great just to download the information and without having to seek for the masters, but knowing they're masters, and you just, oh my God, it'll be awesome.
Maybe that's part of the future of education, because, like the Matrix, just plug in, download, and then go off and use it. So maybe we're predicting the future. Who knows?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yay. Erika, I know that you talk about, and there's been a lot of talk during this pandemic and this crisis, this COVID-19 throughout the world. There's been a lot of talk about inequities and the gaps between the haves and the have-nots, and particularly around resources. And I know one of the things that you say is that, but everybody has a brain. So there's some things we can do to close those gaps. So please, can you tell us a bit more about that?
So if you read anything today in terms of education, what governments are doing in terms of public schooling and private schools around the world, they are shifting towards technology, right? Technology is the answer for crises like this, because it's the way that students have access to the information that's supposed to be at school, they're supposed to get at school. So we have a lot of focus on external resources. And it has been like this forever. The books you have, or the school you go to, or, the location you're at, or the type of computer you have, if it is fast, if it is not, if you have internet or not. So we separate education with the haves and have-nots. Like, for instance, I'm not sure if you remember, a couple of years ago, here in the United States, in LA, there was a big program called iPad for All. Do you remember that? Some of my American friends will remember that, where the Secretary of Education decided to give an iPad to every student to diminish the gap, so everybody could learn the same way. And at the end of the day, it was a disaster. It did not work. The iPads were in a warehouse. Nobody was using them. It was a complete disaster because training didn't come along with it, right? But how about the ones that do not have access to technology? What happens to them? So we're seeing more and more clear of the gaps that exist today in education. COVID came to shake us all and finally give us a chance to transform education, to shift education where education is screaming to go to the direction that we're supposed to go for many, many years. It's not about the resources. It's not about the urban or rural school. It's not about this or that technology. It's not about this or that textbook. It's about the brain. It's about something that everyone has already. So the whole study that we work on, and it's our hypothesis from the beginning for many, many years, decades of working in education, is everybody has a brain. Let's start from there. So we have equity and equality.
Yeah, so everybody has a brain, but there's the difference about some of us know what to do, some of us don't. Some of us are born just knowing how to use it. Some of us have to learn how to use it. Is that something that's different as well?
The beauty of this is the same thing as we say. So Karen can walk and Erika cannot, but Karen and Erika both have legs. So why can't they both walk? Both walk, right? So it's the same thing. It's the use we give to organs of our bodies. So we learn to use our legs, we learn to use our hands, we learn to use the movements of our bodies to exercise, and all we need to do is to know how to use our brains. That's it.
Yeah,
that's the way.
Art Costa would say that yes, we've all got legs and we can all move, but some people move more gracefully and beautifully than others, but that's because they've learned how. Maybe they had a natural gift to start with, but then they've embraced that. So maybe that'll come up as we talk a little bit further. So let's talk about the neurotransmitters of the brain then. What are they and what impact do they have on the brain?
So Karen, usually what I do is I ask teachers we work with that if they can describe the circulatory system in the body, right? So if you think about it, you could describe it with no problem. You know, you have a heart and you have your veins and it goes through the entire body. Then I ask you, can you describe the digestive system? And I truly believe everyone here will be capable of doing it. But when we ask, can you describe the learning system, how the learning occurs in the brain? People say, I'm not sure. I think it's this way or that way. So that's the whole point of understanding how the learning system works in your brain. That's when neurotransmitters come along. So your brain, as my brain, as anybody's brain, has 100 billion neurons. Neurons are the cells in the brain, right? So whenever you learn something new, the neurons form neural connections. It's like they close each other and they join forces, and now you know how to ride a bike, now you know how to read, now you have a certain way you write you're on your writing, now you know to play guitar. So those are neural networks that form in your brain. So neurotransmitters are the glue that glue them together and make sure they're strongly glued so you never forget something. Like you never forget how to ride a bike, even though you spend 10 years without riding a bike, or skiing, for example, which is very difficult for people to do. You never forget how to do things because the neural networks already exist. And when you learn, the neurotransmitters, mostly dopamine and endorphins, glue those neurons together. So that's the importance of neurotransmitters in the brain.
You just reminded me that my mother is in her late 70s and she hadn't ridden a bike for 50 years. And she said, I want to ride a bike. And I'm like, yeah, are you sure, Mum? But actually, she didn't need to go back to the training wheels. She was a tiny bit wobbly for the first 2 or 3 pedals. And then she was fine. It was like she had been riding one for years. The challenge she did have, though, with a bit of an aged body was getting off the bike, getting that, swinging your leg back over and around. But yeah, you're right. So once you've learned something in the body, I know that I've spent years learning the piano and doing all the scales. And not that I'd want to, but if I sat back at the piano, my fingers just know how to do those scales. So neurotransmitters.
That's right. That's right. So if, on the other hand, if there's something that you're doing that you do not enjoy, then there's neurotransmitters for that as well, called epinephrine, which is the fight or flight neurotransmitter. It will put you in a stage of resistance, a stage of stress. And that's not good for you. That's not good for your body. So just for you to have an idea, that stage of stress kills 24%, is responsible for 24% of the deaths in the world. So just for you to see the importance of, not getting into stress. I mean, if you are in that situation, anybody that is listening to us, you need to make sure that you work with professionals to get out of stress, because it's such an important neurotransmitter that can unbalance your entire functionality of your body. So, but that's important for us to understand, because when students are learning something to memorize and to regurgitate information, they don't like that. They don't like that at all. We don't like that at all, right? We like to learn stuff that is related to what we love. So why do you force students to do that? So students are constantly in that stress mode. The test is coming and I have to graduate and I have to go to college and I have to do this and I have to do that. And all that pressure, they're in continuous stress, a stress stage, and is not good for them. So that's another reason to understand how the brain works. Now, the more excited students are about something new, the stronger the neurotransmitter, the neural networks will form. That's why most likely you have heard Donald Hebb's cells that fire together, wire together.
Yes, that's Donald a really common phrase, isn't it?
That's right. Remember that, because it's very important. That's where neurotransmitters come from. Would you like me to give you an example just to demonstrate how neural networks form?
Yes, please.
So let me try to explain to you how artificial intelligence works, right? You know, we always hear artificial intelligence, we think about a robot, right? But it's not that. So artificial intelligence gives you a specific result based on data collected, right? And that data is processed through an algorithm. And this algorithm has a finite number of steps, frequently repetitive steps. Very difficult to repeat, right? Very challenging. But artificial intelligence, the way it works, is like baking a cake. So whenever you have your ingredients, it's your data. The recipe is the algorithm, repetitive steps. Every time you repeat those steps, what happens? You have a cake, you have a result. That's exactly what artificial intelligence is. So what did we just do is we related something completely new to something that is already formed in your neural networks. And now, bam, now you know what artificial intelligence is, and I bet you never forget. See? So that's the importance of neural network.
So artificial intelligence is like baking a cake. It's just going through those steps.
Correct. Correct. And the data is our ingredients. Yeah. But Karen, why do you think that this is so important? Why is this so important? Because your brain has 70,000 plus thoughts a day, right? You think of things 70,000 thoughts per day. Now, 90% of those
exhausted at the end of the day.
Correct. So now, 90% of those thoughts are related to the past, and that makes you choose the same choices, the same behaviors, and the same emotions. So you keep repeating yourself over and over and over again. You keep repeating and living the same life. So that's exactly what happens to students. If they continue to learn something that they're not getting new neural networks, they're not learning at all because they're just being bored in the classroom. They are living by their past. They're repeating the same choices, behaviors, and emotions. And that's really bad for them because that's not going to change their lives. So that's why suspension does not work for students. I mean, a kid is not behaving in school, you suspend the student and then you go home. That does not work. What it works is to give them something new to learn, because the only way for you to transform and grow in your choices, behaviors, and emotions is learning something new. That's the importance of neurotransmitters.
And so this makes me think about many of our students who are in the Southern Hemisphere. We're in the middle of the year right now. And so students have had a break in their learning because of lockdown and COVID-19. And so what that makes me think about, Erika, is that there's a lot of stress, particularly for our secondary students who are going into exams, and they're feeling like, I won't get enough credits, I won't be able to pass, so I've missed significant learning. And so those kind of thoughts, what you're saying is, from the neurotransmitter point of view, those kind of thoughts are not useful. So we need to be able to give our students positivity. We need to be able to give them new neural networks to be able to do things that they love, so that they can get themselves out of the stress and learn new and exciting things.
Correct. Related to what they love. Okay, because sometimes teachers believe that I'm going to make this class really exciting, but it's exciting for the teacher, not necessarily for the students, right? Or exciting for a couple of these students, not all of them. Now, when you start personalizing the learning experience of each of the students, and you start delivering tools that they can learn autonomously and make their choices, you'll see that is a lot easier, and you get students a lot more excited than the situation they are at right now.
Yeah, and so that is the case for that personalization, that purposeful learning, making it meaningful. And even that little example of understanding AI that you just gave, that's the ability for a teacher to be able to link the content that the students are needing to learn to something they know, so they get that aha moment, or it's like, oh, I understand that, and they're linking it to something that's known.
Correct. Absolutely correct.
Yeah. So, Erika, I know you have a 6-step process. So could you step us through those 6 steps, please?
Absolutely. So what we did is, and as Karen said in the beginning, I love to simplify complex things, right? So how do we get all these neurotransmitters and the brain and everything that is happening, and the way the students work, and the use of a student's brain that everybody has, and how to get all of this together in a simplistic way. So we simplified that in 6 steps, right? And to make sure that it goes aligned to the learning system as it occurs in the brain. So the step number 1 is plan and set goals. Everyone here, everyone in the world, the first thing we do in the morning is to understand what's in for the day, right? What do I have to do today? What do I have to accomplish? So students, when they get to kindergarten, all the way to through 12th grade, we give them everything already. They already know from kindergarten at the age of 5, 6, they know what books they have to read, the tests they have to take, the subjects they have to learn. Everything is set for them already. They never plan anything. They never have the opportunity to have choices, because everything is ready. So they sit back and relax and enjoy the ride, right? And that's not good. Why? Because remember the 10,000 hour rule? You need 10,000 hours to be an expert on anything. So students are... Yeah. Anders Ericsson.
Thank you.
Yes. So students are 16,800 hours from kindergarten to 12th grade, sitting and waiting for someone to tell them what to do. They're experts on that. And we cannot allow that. We must make sure that they're planning and they're setting goals, of course, within the parameters of the curriculum established by the country or the state, but they need to be doing that. They need to get involved. So with that, with time, if they're planning just their day, and then they're planning just their week, and then they start planning their month, and then they start planning their year, eventually they'll be planning their life. So that's the whole point, is to give them tools to live a very high quality life. Okay, so then step 1, plan and set goals. Students will develop self-awareness of what they're capable of. If they set 10 goals and they accomplish the 10 goals, what happens at the end of the day? Whoa, I never knew I was able to do this. And then self-confidence start growing, right? And you may say, you may think, well, Erika, this is a dream. Yes, of course, that would be great. But I've seen that happening for the last 15 years. That's the work we do. So I've seen that happening every day with the students we work with. And then you may say also, Erika, this happens with schools of with children in private schools, not in my country, not in public schools. We work 99% with public school systems around the world. So it's not an excuse. There's no excuse. That can happen, step 1. Step 2 is explore. So now, remember the artificial intelligence and the cake recipe? So what we did is we explored previous knowledge that you had and we linked to something new, right? Mm-hmm. So now what we have to do is we have to allow children to do that, to develop that ability. Because the next time you read about artificial intelligence, now you start thinking, you develop his ability to start thinking of things you already know that you can associate existing neural networks to what you're learning new. So step 2 is explore. Step 3 is research. Now that I know that I more or less, associate to something I know from the past, and let me explore, let me read more about artificial intelligence. Let me watch some videos. Now I understand a little bit what that is all about. So we give the opportunity for students to find the sources of information and to organize that information in a way they understand. Not you understand, they understand, right? So we have organizational grids, we have concept maps, we have essays, we have videos, we have notes in the notebook, whatever it takes for children to understand what they have learned. Then we have practice. The step 4 is practice. So get what you learned and you practice. How? Through activities, through project-based learning, through collaboration with others, etc. And that's extremely powerful because now you're getting what you learned, you're getting what you researched, and in your own thought process, and you're translating that into practice. That's what Anders Ericsson says, that's the way to make sure that you learn, right? And then step 5 is relate. What is relate? Is relate what you learned to your life. How am I going to use this? Because that's extremely important. That's the only way that will be recorded in your life. How are you going to use artificial intelligence? Whenever the next time you hear about it, it can be as simple as that. But let me give you an example. I saw a student once talking about presenting how he related math limits. Remember limits in math? How he related math to what he loves. He wants to be a writer, so he loves literature. So he talked about this many authors, like six authors, that relates the limitation of human beings to their lives. So it was extremely interesting how to use math in literature, right? But it's something that children are capable of doing, and we just sometimes don't believe in that, but they're totally capable of doing as long as we allow them to. So they will never forget about limits. I forgot about it. You? And finally, the last step is the 6th step, which is metacognition, which is the self-assessment, right? So did I give my best? Did I accomplish everything that I had in place? Did I do it with quality, etc., and so on? And this is extremely important because we're going to use that skill for the rest of our lives. And in the learning process, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it's important because now you're evaluating the process of learning. And we talked about the process of learning. You're evaluating how good it was for you, especially for you, because that's all that matters. So these are the 6 steps.
I think that metacognition step at the end is critical because years and years ago, John Dewey said, it's not about the experience, it's about the reflection of the experience. And to be able to go back, and even as an adult, and as a parent, I'm continually reflecting, was that the best way to talk to my children? Was that the best advice I could have given them? And just in a little practical way, I'm continually evaluating, have I done the right thing? But if you haven't got that skill or haven't been taught, less likely to be able to reflect on what you've been doing. The other part that I think gets missed is that step number 4, which is the practice. I think teachers often get to they teach the information and then they're so busy trying to get through a curriculum that the students don't actually often have enough time to practice. So would you see that happening as well?
I see that happening a lot. First of all, that the traditional education system jumps right there into teaching something, and then imagine the students never plan their day, so they have no idea what the extent of the content. Then they never explored neuroconnections, so they don't know, they have no idea why am I learning this. Then they never research themselves, so it's boring because now the teacher's giving me everything, so who cares? I don't have to do anything. I'm thinking about my girlfriend, my boyfriend, I'm thinking about the soccer game afterwards, I'm thinking about other things, and then they jump straight into practice. And then we believe that 5 exercises will be it, we'll do the work. Right? It's not enough. It's not enough. It has to evolve more than that. And it has to evolve something useful and meaningful for the students and has a purpose. And the only ones that can find purpose, it's not us that will find purpose, is the student themselves.
Yes, I think that's a really important part because it has to be student-centric, that students are looking for the meaning for themselves because that's where the true learning happens. So, Erika, I know that you love the practical ideas, and I know all the teachers watching just looking for practical strategies and ideas and the implementation of your research. So can you please share some tips and tools that you would recommend teachers use in their classroom to be able to enhance the learning process?
Absolutely. So what I would recommend is that every unit of study that you develop, you use the 6 steps, right? And I'm going to give you practical ways of doing that. So step 1, that is plan. You start with a group goal, and then you set your practice for the first week. And then the second week, you start with the group goal, but also allow students to decide some of the activities that they'll be doing certain times of the day, right? And then you start growing every day, empowering the students each day more and more until they are able to plan by themselves. So that's step 1, plan. That should be incorporated in every single unit of study. The second one is explore. How do you do that? You ask questions. Explore the pre-existing knowledge that students already have. It can be in everyday life questions, it can be expectations, it can be, questions they may have, curiosity they may have. So ask questions. That's the most important thing. 1 or 2, 3 activities. Then the step 3 is research.
Can I just go back, Erika? Can I just go back to
yes.
the questions? So we're asking open-ended questions, we're asking inquiry sort of questions. What kind of questions are we asking?
Correct. So for instance, if we're studying about artificial intelligence or the clouds, right? Let's talk about clouds. What do you know about clouds? So a 6-year-old may say, when is a gray, most likely rain. That's pre-existing knowledge, right? And then you can you can ask open-ended questions, and you can allow students to propose their own questions. Even better, even better. So you grow on those questions from open-ended questions all the way to very specific questions.
Thank you.
So step 3 is research. Research is very interesting because you can use the resources that the school has. And that's when we said, it doesn't matter what kind of resources you have, is because of exactly this. The children will be able to start finding their own resources. Karen, we work with schools with no books at all, no computers at all. And still, kids are learning. These schools are A+ schools, and they have no resources. Where do they find information to learn? They look for the information themselves. You don't have to have, if I don't have the book in the school, I'm not going to learn. It doesn't happen that way. They go after the information. So you have to, in this research, you're practicing with your students to find the information. Allow them to be creative in finding information. Then you get that information and translate it in a organizational grid or a concept map, or something that students can translate what they have learned from different sources into something that they can refer to later on, okay? Then the step 4 is practice. So activities in general, games, projects, essays, videos, a song, whatever students feel comfortable with taking that information they have and practicing to make sure they understand. And then step 5 is relate. It's simple. How is the question? How will I use what I learned? As simple as that. And in the beginning, it's going to be, I'm not sure I'm going to use the gray cloud on the sky. Of course you will. Of course you will. Let's say you go to a hike. Of course the gray cloud will matter. So you help them all the way until they get to do by themselves. And finally, the metacognition process, which is the big thing, right? Because we truly believe the students are incapable of self-evaluating. But here's the trick. Do this. Ask questions. How do you feel? How long did it take for you to do this? Were your goals clear? Did you find any challenges at all? Would you use more or less time the next time? So you start questioning and inquiring about the process of learning, not necessarily the content, okay? Then it's very important that in each of those steps, you touch base with your students, each of those steps, right? And why? Because now you're helping what Anders Ericsson says, you gotta coach the students throughout the process, because the more you coach the process, the better they will be at it, and the less they will count on you the next time, because they now know what to do and how to do it. Okay, so very important to touch base on that. And then do not expect perfection, because we truly believe that, that's my personalizing my student learning process, and the students are autonomous learners, and so they're going to do the work. It doesn't happen that way. It's a process. So we got to be really patient. And remember, when we started riding a bike, how many times we fell until we learned to ride a bike, right? It's the same thing. Students, when they are learning the 6 steps, they will make a lot of mistakes. Our job as educators is to go there in each step of the way and help them go through so they feel more confident, and they will develop that intrinsic motivation that will keep them going. And then finally, praise the progress in the process. Not like you're so intelligent, like Dweck says, don't say the children are intelligent. Tell them they made the right effort to get where they wanted to. So that's extremely important. Praise the process. And one thing that I get all the time, just to conclude, sorry about that, Karen. One thing that I get all the time question is, I have like 30 kids. How am I going to pay attention to each of them in my class? And I have just 15 minutes. And I'm going to touch about that later. So this is a misconception that teachers have, because They do believe that, you have to pay attention to each of them. It's not like that. That's why my organization exists, is to help teachers to get there. It's a process as well. So you start as a group, and then little by little, you see that children will start, instead of touching you every time they go through a step, they'll do 2, 3, 4 steps, and then they'll touch you. Then they'll come to talk to you. So they will start doing things by themselves. Statistic, 37% of the students we work with graduate in 7 months because they learn so fast. They learn so fast. They go through all those steps. It's amazing. So that's to conclude. All right.
What it makes me think, and the question is that, just to be clear, that this is not one size fits all, right? It's not everyone's going through the same stages at the same time, perhaps, because even though what we all have is a brain, we still all learn in different ways, but it's the process that you are talking about, right? So you might have some students doing videos, some doing a sketch. You might have some students doing a role play. So in that practice and in that understanding phase. So am I right on that?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. A couple of years ago, I met someone from Canada in a conference, and she was really proud that she had a school where kids practice a lot of skating so that they could learn and then they could skate. And I asked her, so if that school was in Toronto, so if you have a child all the way to the west of the country that wants to attend that school, that wants to learn skating, does that mean that child will never learn to skate because they're not in Toronto? And she was like, yes. So that's really bad, because you're blocking an opportunity for a child to learn something. So it is right. If you follow the 6 steps, you're giving freedom for your children to do anything they want. They want to play music, they want to play tennis, they want to be a writer, they want to be an engineer. So they find their own way. That's the beauty of this. And then you see another anecdote. A journalist from a very prominent newspaper here in the United States wrote me once an email because he was pissed, and I talked about metacognition. How come children will be self-assessing themselves, and how they're going to get into college? They need their GPA, they need this and they need that. And I said, okay, so let's say that you're hiring somebody, you're hiring a reporter to work with you, right? And you have one reporter that has GPA 4 from a nice college. And you have another reporter that comes to you and show you 12 years of work where she related everything she learned throughout 12 years to reporting. And she has tons of articles she wrote because that's what she did in practice, right? In this practice stage. Throughout 12 years, and how she grew in all her competencies as a writer. Which one would you choose? Which one? And she just said, thank you. So that's the power of the 6 steps, because now you're allowing children to be whatever they want, to pursue their dreams. We're just giving them tools, the necessary tools for them to be great.
Yeah, and that's part of what Sylvia Tolosano talks about, the documentation and being able to show the evidence of the work, which I know many schools and colleges around the world now are starting to move into portfolio of evidence rather than the GPAs, which of course is fantastic because it's showing growth, it's showing the learning steps, it's showing the metacognition and the reflection and the awareness that we can get better at what we do.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the self-correction as well in the metacognition process.
Absolutely. So Erika, how might your 6-step process be used beyond the classroom?
So now you know that you need to have a goal and you need to explore your previous knowledge and you need to research and you need to practice and you need to relate to your life, you need to metacognition, right? Let's say that, Karen, now that you know how to play piano, you want to start playing guitar. You know, you're bored at home because of this time of quarantine throughout the world and you want to learn to play guitar. What would be the first thing to do? I want to play guitar. And how long? 2-3 months. Okay, so now you have a goal. Now you divide that goal into 3 months. And then you're going to explore. What do you know about playing guitar? Well, it has 6 chords and I know the notes and because of the piano. And, you know, you start exploring that. Then you research. Then you study a lot of videos and read some books. You researched. And then we translated that into something that the notes that you used to take when you're a child now is coming back to you. And then you start practicing, right? And then now you relate to your life. Wow, I like playing guitar, or I don't like playing guitar. I'm going to play guitar with my friends and I'm going to do a live video on YouTube, etc. And then you do metacognition. How am I doing? Did I make the effort? Am I accomplishing my goals? Did I learn exactly what I'm supposed to in terms of these notes? So you can learn anything you want with these processes, anything with these steps. Pick and choose, try it out. Watch our video series in the website, which we're giving you for free for participants of this summit. And you'll see that you can use however you like in your life to learn anything you want.
It occurs to me just thinking about those neurotransmitters and that practice stage, because I have started to learn the guitar. So that was interesting that you said that. It occurs to me, though, that sometimes during that practice phase, it's not always pleasant. It sounds awful. It's frustrating. It's challenging. My fingers hurt because I've got metal strings. And sometimes I'm just like, oh, I can't do this anymore. But then the next day I pick it up again and I give it another go. And I can't get my fingers to work the way I want them to work, all that stuff. So it occurs to me that it's important for students to understand in that practice phase that it's not always going to be pleasant. And so I talk about everything is hard before it is easy. And we don't want students to get into that practice phase and go, this is just too hard, I'm not good at this. But one of my mentors talks about it takes 66 days to change a habit. So he talks about the first 22 days, and this comes from the University of London. So they talk about 22 days, it's hard, it's difficult, it's challenging. And then the next 22 days is when you're repatterning in the brain and you're trying to put the new habits into place. And then the third 22 days to get to your 66 is where you start moving to automaticity. And so I can see in my own guitar learning journey that some of the chords I started with are moving into that automaticity. I don't have to think about how to do E minor. I don't have to think about how to do D or whatever it is, because I've been practicing. But at the start it's hard and it's difficult. So I think that's an important conversation around that practice piece.
Yes, absolutely. There will be a nice story you read in my book about John Irving. He's an author, a very famous author of many novels, and he's an award-winning author. And he talks about you gotta love the process. You have to absolutely love the process. And in his case is the love process of writing. He was also a fighter, right? So he practiced a lot, and you have to repeat over and over and over and over again. What a great opportunity for our children, our students, to practice the learning process over and over and over and over again for 12 years. And they leave school, high school, with 16,800 hours of practice. They're experts on learning anything they want in their lives. All in love with the process.
Absolutely. And I think that if, like, you're talking my language, I'm a champion for lifelong learning. And so for me, that's the basis. If children can learn and know the learning process and know how to go through that and know the ups and the downs that go with that and love the learning process, understand it and love it, then of course the world is their oyster. They can do anything they want. So thank you for that. As we finish up, Erika, any final tips, any other ideas you'd like to share with our audience?
Yes. I would love to share 4 misconceptions because people say, whoa, this is all great, but you know what? Yeah, it's not going to work for me. So I would like to share 4 misconceptions that usually we see teachers, that hold back teachers, a few percentage, but they're held back because of those. The very first one is the misconception that students are incapable of executing those steps by themselves. They're incapable. So you got to remind yourself all the time that's something new for them. And with practice is going to be a habit, right? It's like riding the bike, as we talked so many times today. It's like riding the bike. The more you practice the steps, the more you'll be good at. And some people will use the bike riding to compete at the professional level. And some people will just ride the bike just to go to work, to back and forth. So students are completely capable of learning the steps. That's the first one. The second one is that you need to work with small number of students to provide attention to each of them. So that's very common, we mentioned before, but let's say you have a 25, 30 students. Sometimes we work with teachers that have 300 students at a time to work in one single week. It's very challenging for them, but still possible. Why? Because when students learn the learning process, the step 1 through 6, they'll be doing by themselves. You know, they'll be touching you once in a while. Sometimes, you know, students that have high levels of autonomy will touch a teacher once a month. And don't believe that you don't need teachers. Yes, you do. You do believe teachers because they still need feedback on how they're doing in the process, how to improve it, if they're doing the right thing, etc., and so on and so forth. So it's a whole misconception. You are totally capable of working with 5 kids as 300 kids. The other one is that you have a limited time. You just have a 50-minute class or a 75-minute class, and it's impossible to do anything in that time frame. So I want you to think of the first time you cooked a meal. You tried a new recipe, the cake that we talked about before, right? It took you most likely forever, and you made a mess in the kitchen. But with time, if you do that all the time, it's going to be a piece of cake. It'll be easy, right, for you. So that's the same thing with learning the 6 steps. It's going to be eventually so simple and so practical that it will become a habit for students and for the teachers. So forget about the limitation of time. We're focusing on quality. Constant quality, variable time, right? The education, traditional education is what? Fixed time. You have 1 year of school. And variable quality. If students will get to A, B, C, D, F at the end of the year. Variable quality. Now we're shifting that. It's constant quality, variable time. And the last one is that you believe that students, like for instance, you have a student that doesn't like math, and therefore they won't be able to do anything with the unit study you provide with math, for example. So what you have to remember is that there are a lot of gaps. Nobody's born not liking math. I mean, it's when you're in the hospital, it says these babies don't like math, these babies don't like language arts, you know, these babies don't like social studies. It doesn't happen that way, right? We learn not to like something when we have gaps, when it don't grasp the idea, when it's not important for us. As long as we break that, we break the gaps and we eliminate everything that is unrelated to that subject, but the process, Then we get students to love the idea of learning math and relating to and it's not just math. I mean, it's anything, right? So do not believe that just because a student has difficulty on your subject, they will not be able to learn using the 6 steps. They will. All we have to do is to make sure that we close the gaps. So that's the message that we'd like to leave at the end.
Thank you so much. Yeah, because it's all doable, but small steps for teachers, and start small and then just build and build and build. And a conversation I've had a couple of times is that we play the long game in education, because it's not just for the week you have them or a year that you have them. They're in the school for several years. So it's when everybody can be part of this process that's where the power and the weaving of it comes. But of course, if you're only one, it's not an excuse not to do it in your school and do what you believe, but to play the long game for this. So thank you. Erika, a quick question at the end, just to find out from you, is what are you reading? What's inspiring you right now? Maybe you are listening to something, podcast, maybe you're watching something personally or professionally. What's really inspiring you right now, professionally or personally?
Karen, after I learned that you always have to learn something new to form new neural connections, otherwise you'll be repeating yourself from the past, I love to learn. So I'm always reading. I read 2-3 books per month, more or less. Mindless work, and I wish to get to the point of spending 20% of my time, of my week and my month and my years learning, reading, watching something interesting. So lately, a couple of books I've read that I would highly recommend, I love, The End of Average by Todd Rose. It fosters the best of people without comparing to the average. Right? So it's very interesting the way that he proposes those changes. The other one I like, it's American Icon. It's the story of Alan Mulally. He was a CEO of Ford, and he established processes and procedures, very simple, that allowed Ford to grow before almost going bankrupt. So it's very interesting to see the importance of simple processes. Right, so it's a great story. And I love Dr. Yuval Noah Harari. Any book by him. He's a historian. He's from Israel, and he talks about the history of humanity, and he talks about the future. One of his books is Homo Deus, Homo Sapiens. So he has a lot of stories that will definitely give us a very nice view of the past, the present, and what can be our future. And also my engineering background, I love Neil deGrasse Tyson, the astrophysicist. Any videos of Neil is absolutely great.
Wow, very eclectic sort of mix of what you are inspired by, which is absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. Erika, I know you've got a couple of freebies for our people who have bought the All Access package, and you've been very generous. Can you tell us what you're going to offer them?
Oh my goodness, yes, it's true. We have great freebies for you. The very first one is an infographic where you can observe some dimensions of learning and understand the difference between traditional education and what it means of relational learning, which is the 6 steps of learning that we talked today. You have a 70-minute free video series that you can learn more about what we talked today, explaining in depth with examples. You're going to love it. I'm giving away the first chapter of my book for people who sign up, and Karen will provide the link, right? So you sign up for this and you receive, the book is coming up pretty soon, the next couple of weeks. So you're going to have the very first chapter for free. And we also give you 2 discounts. The first discount is an online course, Introduction to Relational Learning. So how to dive in the 6 steps and how to use them in your classroom. It's $194. That's it. 60% discount. And also 60% discount on my book that is coming up that will explore a lot about what we talked today. The name of the book is Becoming Einstein's Teacher, Awakening the Genius in Your Students.
Oh, just the title sends shivers up my spine and go, I have to have that. I have to be able to read that. So I've written a book last year called Project Genius. So that whole idea of how do we create geniuses, well, we already are, but how do we pull that out? So I'm intrigued by yours too. Erika, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, for your ideas, for sharing your process with us and your generosity to be able to give us so much away and discounts for people who really want to explore more. We really appreciate that. So thank you so much for being at the summit.
Thank you very much. Teachers, you are my inspiration, so keep up with the great work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So if you haven't already signed up to the All Access package, there's still time. The information is down below. Just click on it, just put in your details, and you can get all those discounts, those freebies, and of course so many more of our presenters have done that. So they're so generous with what they've been offering. So day 3, a few more videos to watch if you're watching them in order, and I know so much more inspiration. So keep learning.